Hey, Matt Johnson here with Ice Team. You know, we're out here on early ice chasing down panfish, crappies, and bluegills. And we're going to chase these fish down a variety of ways. And you chase fish a variety of ways throughout the ice fishing season. So what I really wanted to touch on right now is the progression of panfish. At least that's what I call it. We deal with negative, neutral, and aggressive panfish. And you never know what you're going to get. We get all kinds of different pressure systems in the wintertime. We get all kinds of elements and outside variables that change the bite. So I want to walk through the panfish progression. We're going to start with an aggressive application. I'll show you what I'm fishing here right now. And I oftentimes, I should say all the time, want to get away with the most aggressive presentation I can. Try to catch this fish quick for you guys and see if we can get this one to bite. But I'm always starting with like a jig and spoon. And you can see I'm just working a spoon pretty aggressively. You got to try to catch him if you see him on camera, and of course, just like that, he's gone. So like I was saying, we always start with something aggressive. I always try to get away with the biggest presentation I can. And for me, that's a spoon. That's what I start with. So right here, I got a 16th ounce pinhead spoon. This is the Wonder Bread color. This is a non-jointed. You can use a jointed spoon or non-jointed. It's really personal preference. But this allows me to be aggressive, meaning I can get down quick, I can fish fast, I can reel fish up. The hooking percentage with the treble hook is better than a single hook. So if I can ensure myself that when I set the hook into that fish, I got a better chance of getting it up here so I can hold it, that's what I want. So a treble hook's a great option. I also can get down there quick if I'm getting on a school of fish. So for me, I'm oftentimes starting with something to this nature. And I'm fishing a 3-pound test line. I'm using a spooler setup and I'm pulling the line up by hand, but I can fish this erratically, I can fish this aggressively. And whether I'm targeting bluegills or crappies, they'll take that spoon. It's not that big. That's what they're feeding on. They're feeding on little pin minnows. Sometimes we overthink it. So this is my go-to aggressive. This is my starting point. And then from there, I let my Vexilar tell me what these fish want. Are fish coming in fast, and then are they shying away? Are they coming in slow and not touching it? Or are they coming in and are they just crushing it? I can tell you when I'm fishing crappies, this spoon oftentimes is the way to go, even big bluegills. So I'm starting with the spoon. I'm letting the Vexilar tell me what it wants to do. I got 3-pound test line on here. I'm fishing a noodle rod. I can see those bites, solid backbone. This is a fairly aggressive application. Now, if I see that these fish are really crushing it, and let's say they're all over the water column, I might go to a swimming lure. And by a swimming lure, I mean a tikka minnow. It's going to be a jigging minnow, right? And a lot of anglers out there watching this have probably seen this style of bait. It's nothing new. It's hot. It catches a pile of fish. Anglers use this open water. They use it ice fishing. That's going to be your tikka minnow. On the bottom of that treble, I actually have a silky as just an indicator, as something to entice these fish. But this is going to swim and dart and make really large, aggressive movements. If you can get your panfish to take a tikka minnow, which is not uncommon, they go down to 16th ounces. So we have some small tikka minnows. This is an 1/8 ounce in my hand. That's a great way to get it, because this is probably the most aggressive. This is probably the most get after it and go presentation you're going to have, is a swimming minnow. So, and with this, I'm fishing a little stouter rod, maybe longer. I'm using a spinning reel because I can get down quick. And we're in generally shallow water here, but if I'm fishing deeper water, I am going to put a swivel on this just to help with line twists and some of that kind of stuff. And you can get away with a longer rod. And I'm using usually 3 or maybe 4-pound test line if I am on the extreme spectrum of aggressively targeting panfish. So there's your tikka minnow. I would encourage you to look into something like that if you're aggressively fishing. So whether it's a spoon or a tikka minnow, those are great ways to jump at your aggressive fish. Now, you can fish aggressive fish with some smaller panfish applications as well. Now, aggressively fishing doesn't just mean the lure. It can be the action you dictate. So you can use a smaller presentation and aggressively fish for these fish. So the term aggressive is relative. It's not just the size of the bait, it's also the action you employ on that bait. So we look at some aggressive, larger tungsten options. You can see here I got my slim box. Super nice. I can put this in the pocket of my ice armor bibs, and I can get in here and take out and see what's going on. So an idea of an aggressive tungsten jig is you got like a double XL. This is a pretty large profile. I'll show you this jig. It's got a big beefy hook, large profile, heavy, gonna go down fast. I can put a bigger plastic or let's say a whole minnow on there, and I can target those basin crappies. I can get down quick, I can be efficient, I can be aggressive. So the double XL is a good option. And just a little outside tip, The double XL is really good on big walleyes too. So if I go to Lake of the Woods or Mille Lacs or something like that, the double XL gets used. So even some of these big aggressive panfish presentations can double as big perch or walleye presentations. So I'm looking at that. I'm also looking at some of the XL versions of the jigs. So you can see here again, beautiful layout. I can open this up. And what I mean by an XL version is some of our jigs have an XL hook. So you're going to have your same smaller profile head, but you can see there on camera, it's got a larger hook. Larger gap, longer shank. That's great for these larger plastics. So the XL version hook, super simple. I'm going to give you a tip. Super simple. Works good with the XL version plastics. So I get that question often. Why do you use the XL version drop? Why do you use the XL version of this or that? Well, it's nice to pair up with what I'm going to show you next, which would be an XL version of a plastic. So you have a Poly XL, you have a Minnow XL, you have a Jamie XL, you have a variety of plastics in the Mackie lineup that's going to come as an XL version. To me, that's going to be an aggressive application. So now I can pair this XL plastic with that XL jig, drop XL, whatever it might be, and I can get down there and aggressively target these fish. So hit you hard with a lot of aggressive applications. It is something I think we overlook as anglers. And one more tidbit before I move on to neutral and negative presentations and applications is I find it oftentimes when I'm dealing with a negative fish, just like musky fishing, they may want to eat only one time a day. So I've seen where when the fish are negative, turn into one of these aggressive applications can actually catch your fish and trigger them to bite instead of downsizing and force feeding them. Give that fish one big steak, that's the only meal they're going to eat that day, and you'll be surprised on even negative bites that have aggressive applications work. So, let's say I'm looking at my Vexilar. We've tried these aggressive applications, whether it's a spoon, a tikka minnow, larger plastic, larger tungsten, and these fish are coming in and they're just not taking it, right? Now we're going to jump into the negative or neutral zone. That's where I'm going to start to play with noodle rods, spring bobbers. You can see the tip of this scepter has got that beautiful, just bouncing action spring. I can see the most supple bite, whether it's a down bite or an up bite. So this spring bobber is a great strike indicator. It's something I think a lot of anglers overlook, not just as a strike indicator, but when I'm jigging, it suppresses my jigging motion. So if I'm jigging that bait down below, we're all aggressive jiggers, right? We can't help it. That spring bobber changes that jigging motion to a more swimming action. So this not only shows you the fish, the bite detection, but it gives you some room for error on your jigging sequence. So when I'm in the negative or neutral mode, I'm turning to this type of setup. I'm using a spooler rod. I may downsize to 2-pound test line, and I'm fishing smaller tungsten jigs. I will start maybe at a size 10, and then I'll go down to a 12, and even down to a 14 or a 16. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to listen to what these fish show me. I'm going to look at my Vexilar, which is my fish mood indicator, and I'm going to have it tell me what size jig and how low I need to go and how slow and how much finesse I need to apply. Generally speaking, I'm going to start with the number 12. This is a number 12 tungsten jig. It gets down pretty quick. It's got the small profile, but I still have a lot of control. And again, I couple that with a spooler rod. A spooler reel, again, that doesn't have any line twist. It gives me the most control, and I can drop it down on top of these weird negative fish, and I don't have a spinning jig. And I happen to be just fishing, like I said, a scepter rod, spring bobber, 2-pound test, metered line. I can see the line. I want to give myself every advantage I can when I'm dealing with negative neutral fish. So whether I see the bite on the spring bobber, oftentimes I'm not going to feel it, but I can see this line against the white ice or the snow for that little twitch, that little movement at the base of the water line. Because if I'm fishing a plastic, I know it's not a minnow or a maggot, it's a fish. And in fishing, hook sets are free. You think you have a fish, set the hook and bring it home. So what am I going to put on the end of this with negative fish? I'm a finesse plastics guy. I love fishing plastics, and my go-to oftentimes is going to be like a Mackie minnow. And the beauty of this, I'm going to show you a tip. I'll rig this up. I don't have anything on that hook by design. Take one of these out of this cage here. Got that little tray inside there. It's kind of nice. You can slide them out easy. And this is what I have here. It's small. It's a 1-inch presentation. This is just a little 1-inch minnow. And you can fish these baits out of the package just like you'd want, right? You can fish them whole. But one thing I always tell any angler is you feel free to manipulate that plastic. Just because it's like this out of the bag doesn't mean you have to fish it that way. So me, I usually take a little bit off the tip here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. I take a little bit off the tip. I just take my fingernail and I pinch just this little chunk off. It's a tiny little wedge. And I'll show you why I do that. So I take that out, discard that in the bottom of my fish trap. Now I have a flat end to that little minnow. It even drops the minnow down to like a 3/4 of an inch, right? Look at that tail. I can't even stop that from moving if I tried. Now I take my number 12 drop kick, my finesse application, and I'm just going to thread that on there and butt that flat end right up. Probably hard to see on camera, I apologize, but I'll show you what I'm working with here. I butt that right up. You can see how it fits there nice and neat. Just like that. Now, I have a small little finesse bait that I can fish for crappies, bluegills, whatever it might be, and away I go. So that thing is going to give you a natural horizontal presentation. A lot of these fish are feeding on these tiny pin minnows or insects or whatever it might be. So now I'm actually taking that plastic out of the package, manipulating it to get the desired action, the desired outcome. So that's an easy way to chase down some of those fish. Now, I may also take some smaller insect baits and nip hook them. I may also take my trusty bait puck, and what's inside here? Maggots, Eurolarva. I can take a single maggot, a double maggot, 3 maggots. Dave Gens will call it a Medusa head. He'll have these maggots entwined, tangling all over the place. Sometimes giving them some scent and some meat can play a role as well. So I always got a pack of maggots here. As a fishing guide, it's pretty much a mainstay. You got to have them with you. But I'll oftentimes, like we started this video, I'll try to get away with a plastic. I want to be the most efficient as possible. But I always have a can of bait puck here, a clam can of maggots on me. But there's all kinds of applications for targeting finicky fish. You can see the same jig box I pulled out. I have all kinds of colors. I have different styles. I have different shapes. Oftentimes, I think we overlook it. We think too much about what these fish want versus just working on our confidence baits. But there's a slew of stuff you can pick from. We've seen that. Another thing that's a great alternative is a silky. I try not to beat the silky like a dead horse because they can be hard to find. They sell it every year. We're stocking them up. But this silky is a great application as well where you can just thread hook that on there. It's really tantalizing. It entices fish. It is true silk. So when that thing's in the water, it just moves by the natural current. And fish will take that. I oftentimes tip this on a tungsten. I'll tip it on the end of a spoon. You saw it on that Tika minnow. It's just another added attraction to entice these fish into biting. That's the silky. Great application as well. I wanted to touch on some other things that play a role on the panfish progression where it's not just about the rods, the reels, the line, the tackle, because we can talk about that all day. When you're aggressively targeting panfish, another beauty of it is we're probably hole hopping, right? We're outside the fish house and we're chasing down fish. That's where you can wear gloves. You can use these aggressive applications, whether it's a spoon or a Tika minnow. Throw your glove on, be warm, be comfortable, chase down your fish. And if you're targeting finesse fish where they're really negative, hop inside your fish trap. You know, the fish trap is nice. It's not just something to keep you warm. When I'm inside this fish trap, I'm in the zone. I am 100% focused. I can turn the buddy heater on for a second and warm my hands up. I can really focus on everything that fish is doing. So if I'm dealing with super negative fish, which we do encounter during the ice fishing season, that's when I'm probably going to flip over my fish trap. So I can really hone in on what's going on. I can really focus on my jigging sequence. I can watch those fish bite, and I can have all the control in the world. So there's a lot of things that come into play on panfish progression. And what I often do, like I said, rely on your Vexilar as your mood indicator. Let that tell you what these fish want you to do. And then it becomes the fun game we all call ice fishing, right? You start grabbing out your jig boxes. You start playing with different spoons. You might play with a swimming lure like a Tika minnow. You got to play with the tungsten. You're going to manipulate plastics. You might grab maggots. You might move spots. All that kind of stuff play a role in the panfish progression. So get out there, chase some fish, have some fun, bring a variety of rods and reels. Get out there, catch them all, see you on the ice.